Hello and welcome to the VandySports podcast, which is part of the 440 Sports Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Joining me today, co-host Billy Derrick, also longtime Vanderbilt insider Luke Wyatt. Before we get to those guys, our news is presented by the Wash House, which is also our presenting sponsor for basketball season. Are you dreading laundry day? Is it stealing time to do the things you truly enjoy? Let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of all that for you with two convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and our professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, and that is your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry ready to be put away. Check them out at www.washhouseclean.com. Stop in today and get your time back. Okay, our news revolves around football. If you live under a rock, you don't know that Vanderbilt has a football game with Hawaii. It is at Vanderbilt Stadium at 6:30 on Saturday evening. It is going to be hot as can be, so good luck to you as you balance that, staying out of the heat, but also getting in on time. Where your entrance points are going to be limited. We'll probably go over that a little bit in the podcast and certainly on Billy's preview show. Billy, tell us about today's show and what we're going to speak about today.
Yeah, today's topics, obviously, we'll get to predictions for Vanderbilt and Hawaii, but the depth chart was released. There were a couple surprises of note, so we'll get into those, and we got plenty of mailbag questions to get into as well. So those are the topics, and they are presented by the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company, and they are the best. They are the best in the business. Family-owned, third-generation mile and ice cream distribution company located in Murfreesboro. A partnership began over 50 years ago with Purity Dairy in Nashville to provide purity milk and ice cream to consumers in Middle Tennessee. And they now serve Southern Kentucky, Northern Alabama, and Chattanooga and North Georgia. Today, they supply grocery stores, convenience stores, and others with Purity products, as well as Mayfield, Nestle, Haagen-Dazs ice cream. For more information, visit their website at mpmci.com. That's mpmci.com. Thanks to them for also being our sponsor for all baseball content this season. Might need some ice cream this Saturday.
Oh, man, we're going to need something cold because it is going to be blistering hot that day. But by the way, a shout out to those two sponsors. Steve Andrews at Wash House has been a friend of mine for about 20 years. Davey Shung, a new friend of mine, got to meet them at a Vanderbilt football event on Saturday, as did you guys. Wonderful human beings. Those are the people that literally kept our show alive this year and enabled me to pay Billy some money and get the help that I begged for in the offseason. So thank you to those guys. It does very much make a difference. You can see we're putting out more content, and we will start taking it to another level this week. Well, Vanderbilt hopes to take it to another level on Saturday, and it gave us a little more glimpse of what things will look like with the release of the depth chart on Saturday. Now, look, some things here I want to give some notes before I throw it to Billy and then Luke for their thoughts. But Darren Agu, I think is how they pronounce it. I've been pronouncing it wrong the entire time. Is going to be out for Saturday's game. He is listed on the depth chart. There'll probably be another one or two of those guys that maybe aren't good to go that are listed on this chart that you won't see. But Billy, when you saw the depth chart come out yesterday, anything surprise you or stand out there?
Yeah, there were a couple of surprises. I'll start on offense. Richie Hoskins, starting above Junior Sherrill. And Chris, I don't think we're really surprised by that. Hoskins has been
he's not starting, but he's the top backup.
So yes, top backup.
Yeah.
Don't want to get people confused. Jaden McGowan is starting in the slot, but Richie Hoskins at least starting this season as that top backup in front of Junior Sherrill. Now Hoskins is an experienced guy, but I think that tells you it kind of proof in the pudding for Richie Hoskins is what he has done in fall camp. He's looked really good. Obviously, at the quarterback position, Chris, that's somewhat what we expected. Walter Taylor is listed before Drew Dickey, but it's Walter Taylor or Drew Dickey. So I think we'll continue to be interested to see how that third quarterback spot shakes out. Logan Kyle at the F position, and Luke, could you explain that? Obviously, we're seeing a tight end with Justin Ball and Cam Johnson, but is the F? I'm guessing that's just the other tight end, or is there a specific position, specification there?
You can call it an H back or a fullback. I think that's you won't see that much unless it's goal line or short yardage,
Right.
in my opinion. So yeah, that's really what it is. It's a hybrid between an H back and a fullback.
That's exactly what I thought. Of course, offensive line, Chris, no surprise there. Defensively, Tyson Russell and B.J. Anderson. Luke, you you were right on it there, and I don't think either of us are too surprised by that. I think we expected that. C.J. Taylor, of course, getting the start. Mahoney, DeRicky Wright, Ethan Barr is back. Nick Rinaldi right behind Kane Patterson. So there's some slight surprises, Chris. Again, and then on the D line, DeCosmo, Devin Lee, Nate Clifton, and Darren Agu, but Issa Taha right behind Darren Agu at DN, which I think is interesting. We're going to see him play on the edge. We'll probably see him play on the inside against Hawaii as well. So nothing really glaring, but I think there were a couple surprises, most notably Hoskins above Sherrill, and then Russell and Anderson getting the start, and of course Borchilla named the place kicker. So nothing too glaring, but those were some of my takeaways.
I think you got it covered. The only one that kind of stuck out to me, and I guess it's more because of injury than anything, is Michael Spencer, the backup lineman.
Right.
That body, I get that. So short yardage, again, he'll be in on the defensive side of things. But that one kind of surprised me a little bit. I guess Davion Davis, even though he's been practicing, I don't know if that surgical knee is flared up. I don't know. But I thought he would be in that spot. Besides that, the rest of them you've already touched on, and I agree with that.
Yeah, let me hit on some things on both sides of the ball here. I'll just read down the depth chart as they've got it listed. London Humphreys is backing up Will Shepherd at one of those receiver positions. I think those will be a little bit more interchangeable, but it's interesting because I don't think Shepherd will come off the field a bunch, but man, they have got playmaking options between those two kids.
Mm-hmm.
Skinner won the other receiver spot ahead of Gamarian Carter. Again, no surprise. Skinner, I'm not going to say was limited in practice, but had some days where you really noticed he was out there. He had one scrimmage where I think he caught 6 balls, 2 scores, and went for like $153. So no shock to see him win that. The slot position and the reaction we got on the board was, oh my goodness, what's wrong with Junior Sherrill that he's the 3? But Billy, I mean, how many times was I at practice with you and I said, look, 15 made another catch.
And we were interested to see if this would play out in the final depth chart, right, Chris? And it has. So I think that's notable. And he's a big kid too, 6'1", almost 200 pounds. He's athletic. Yeah. So I think Hoskins will do some things that might surprise some people this year.
Here's how competitive that position is. Richie Hoskins may have caught more balls than anybody in camp this year. I would, if I had to make a bet, that's who it would be. I said Junior Sherrill, I thought had a legit shot to beat out Jaden McGowan in the slot. Now, Jaden's healthier, and so I think that probably who we last saw and who he can be are different. He had 2 health issues. One that he played through last season, and he said that was a mistake. The other one came up in spring camp and held him out part of the time. So it's kind of an apples to oranges comparison with Jaden McGowan, because the one we saw banged up and the one we saw healthy were 2 different guys. But that's how good Junior Sherrill is. I think people looking at this and saying that's a concern, or that maybe Junior Sherrill, isn't what people thought, that's a mistake. Because we saw it with our own eyes. Hoskins made plays every single practice, and usually 2 or 3 of them that would make you sit up and take note. He's not your normal, like if you went out and said that's a scholarship wideout and looked at that kid, it's believable. He's good enough. The running back is exactly like we thought it was. Quarterbacks, you guys tell me. Because here's the thing, you would watch people drop in on camp from the media, and the guy they always ended up talking about was Walter Taylor. Now, Walter Taylor, I saw the balance of camp, and there were a lot of mistakes there, but I've always said the talent is there. I always thought Drew Dickey was pretty clearly the number 3, but maybe I wasn't watching enough. I don't know how much that matters, but Luke, did that one surprise you a little bit?
No, and I listened to your yesterday's Clark's press conference, and he kind of explained it when someone brought it up. I'm not sure if it depends on the situation who the number 3 is. In other words, if we're just protecting a lead, and you have to go to your number 3, and you're up 2 or 3 touchdowns in the fourth, I think it'll be Drew Dickey. If we got to throw the football down the field and that type of thing, and have somebody scramble around and make plays, it'll be Walter Taylor. And I think that's the reason why they have him as or. They have the or in there.
Here's another one that surprised me. Charlie Clark is the backup left tackle. Now, I had him penciled in as the backup right tackle. Clark is another walk-on. He's massive. I'm saying this from memory. I think they listed him at 6'7", 330, and he got a lot of snaps. I thought Leighton Nelson would be the backup, probably left, and Clark the backup on the right side. I wasn't even sure Clark would be the official backup on the right side because David Siegel had played there some, but that was kind of interesting. Anything else on the offensive line stand out to you? Again, they're listing the same 5 starters that started all fall camp when all those guys were healthy.
That's the thing that excites. Same 5 guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Chris, right behind those guys, you mentioned Charlie Clark, who we started to see a little bit more of late in fall camp, but I think that right side with Grayson Morgan, the backup center, Gage Pitchford at guard, and then Leighton Nelson at right tackle, you've got your right side of that line of the future. I think the left side may be a little bit more in flux with Clark and then Wesley, see how that shakes out. But boy, that right side of that line looks pretty strong. And Morgan at center has gotten a lot bigger. It's kind of crazy how much bigger he's gotten. So, offensive line, definitely expect big things from them, especially against Hawaii.
Okay, corners, it's kind of what Luke said it would be. It was Russell and Height. That was not an or situation. So Russell is their starter unless something changes now and then. Tyson Russell, yeah. B.J. Anderson has the other corner spot over Trudell Berry. No surprise. I don't think there was a practice. I'm sure there was one. Boy, they didn't roll it. Anderson out first. Sometimes they will mix and match corners and give guys reps with the first team just to do it. But Anderson was clearly going to be the starter there the whole time. CJ Taylor back at anchor. We all knew he would start if he was healthy. I'm going to say he missed 80% of camp just to try to keep him healthy. Yeah. Bryce Cowan, that allowed him a chance to develop there. I think we were all pretty, I'm not going to say blown away. That's a little much, but very impressed with Bryce Cowan at times. Mahoney, the other safety, with Savion Riley backing him up. Again, the injuries or the holding guys out, it gave Riley a ton of reps in spring and fall. Riley might have been out. I think between spring and fall, Savion Riley had the most reps of any safety, and it probably wasn't close just from holding the other guys out. So they got him some experience. DeRicky Wright, the other safety, no surprise there. The one we wondered about, Barr and Langston Patterson at middle linebacker, I thought that could be an or. I thought it might be Langston Patterson listed first. Barr had missed a lot of camp late, but they went with Barr as a standalone, but not an or. But I think that's going to be close to a 50-50 timeshare there. Brian Longwell backing him up. And again, Brian Longwell made about as many plays as anybody in camp as a true freshman. He is your 3 there, so that's good news. Kane Patterson, who I don't think will come off the field a ton at the other linebacker spot. Nick Rinaldi behind him, another walk-on who is very athletic. I think he was a 10-800-meter guy in high school. Now weighs 232 pounds. He's 6'3". We saw him make plays in camp. So yet another walk-on who looks like he can help them. DeCosmo is going to be at that, good grief, the star position, which is your hybrid edge rusher. Capers, I think, will play a lot. Devin Lee is the starting guy at the nose position, nose tackle. As you mentioned, Luke, Spencer, the 2 there. Bradley Mann, the 3. I think Davis would have been the 2 in that spot. Mann can play in a lot of places, so I don't know that we'll see him exclusively there. Clifton, who was great in camp, beats out Baps. I didn't know Baps. I thought Baps would be slotted more on the end, but again, those linemen are interchangeable. And Darren Agu would be the starter at the other end position but he's going to be out, I think, for game one. Issa Watara, I think I mispronounced it for a while. The pronunciation they
Wataha.
originally put out, yeah, that was wrong, but I was going off what had been put out. I think it's Watara. Anyway, I think he will be your starting defensive end against Hawaii. I have rambled for a bit. Any thoughts on that? They're starting with Luke.
Linus Zunk will play some as well, I think, over there. Going against the run and shoot guys, I think you're going to see a lot of guys rolling in and out. Talk about guys not coming off the field in this heat. And like I said, this run and shoot, I think their plan will be we're going to run these guys till their tongues hang out. I think that's Hawaii's plan. So I think you're going to see the ball in the air all day long. The old Mouse Davis run and shoot, they could throw the thing 60, 65 times.
Meanwhile, for Vanderbilt, Luke, you're going to see the ball through the air for Vanderbilt, but you might see more running than expected because, you want to keep that Hawaii offense off the field and your defense off the field, right? If you're able to keep that defense off that hot turf in the heat, you can do that by running the football and possessing the football. And I was looking at Hawaii's depth chart. I know we're talking about Vanderbilt's right now, but Hawaii's defensive line is similar to last year's in terms of beef or lack of beef up front. So I think Vanderbilt will be able to run the football. I think they will run the football a decent bit. Now they will throw it as well, but I think that's something to watch as well offensively with those backs. The D line's going to be interchangeable, but you could see every running back against Hawaii, and I think you will, and it'll be really good to see how Cedric Alexander, Newberry, and Diego Benson, that competition starts to sort of shake out. This Hawaii game is a big game for them. So is Alabama A&M. So just like you said, they'll be interchangeable on the D-line. I think they'll be interchangeable at running back and receiver for that matter as well.
Right.
Billy, you brought up an interesting point there because I think they have been higher on their running game publicly and privately than I have been.
Mm-hmm.
And look, when in doubt, trust the coaching staff over me, I guess. But they brought up the point, Ray Davis, 1,000-yard rusher now at Kentucky, but I've heard this said a couple times. Hey, the line that blocked for 1,000-yard rusher is all back this year. So, I think that Luke brought up an interesting point in how Hawaii will attack. I do wonder if we will see Vanderbilt go a little more ground heavy, especially with the lead, just because of all those dynamics. Luke, your thoughts first there.
I do, and this is kind of getting into the prediction thing, but anybody that's expecting 63-10 again can forget it. That's not what this is going to be for several reasons. The motivation Hawaii has with what's been going on in their state, that will play out early. I think they're going to play with a ton of emotion. Of course, Vanderbilt will too, but at the same time, I think that will play a small factor. And I think now that Timmy Chang has been able to get his feet under him and able to establish something offensively, I think he's a really good offensive mind. And so I think they're going to be able to move the football a lot better than they did last year.
Yeah, I agree with that. Timmy Chang, we all know how good of an offensive mind that he is. I mean, you saw some flashes of it last year and in last year's game and even late in the Rainbow Warriors season. So for Vanderbilt, they're going to have to come out there ready to play. And if they start slow this year, because we know they did last year, if they start slow this year, that might get a little dangerous with this Hawaii team. So, and Clark has said that. He said, we've got to start well. We cannot start sleepy. We've got to be the aggressor. And he's treating this Hawaii team like it's Georgia. And I think that's another thing that, we've been impressed with Coach Lee and the staff, the way they approach every game.
I always tell Vanderbilt fans that say, well, we should blow this team out or we should blow this team out. Vanderbilt is never going to be in a position to where they can point to a team and say, we're going to win this game 63-10. It's never going to be like that at Vanderbilt because you're never going to have that elite 5-star talent where you're a Georgia or whatever, maybe Alabama. So people can kind of forget, just take the wins as they come.
Gentlemen, I know we were going to do predictions and just some miscellaneous roster thoughts, but my experience is a lot of times the mailbag asks the questions that we're going to discuss.
Right.
So I say we table that part until after we do the mailbag, and then we'll kind of wrap up with our final thoughts and our predictions. So, Billy, if you would please, the mailbag.
Let's do it. Today's mailbag is sponsored by Sutherland and Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call at 615-846-6200 to see where your rights are and if they can help. All right, real quick piece of news, though, before we get to the mailbag. The Senior Bowl has announced their 720 position players. Vanderbilt has 3 of them on that list. Jalen Mahoney, Will Shepard, and DeRicky Wright will be attending the Senior Bowl. So congratulations to them, and no surprise those guys were selected. But we'll go ahead and get into the mailbag now. We'll start with
hold
Foghorn.
on. Hang on just a minute. So I didn't see. So is that the watch list or is that the selection list?
Oh my, Chris, you got me there. My apologies. Okay. That is the watch list. Okay, that is the watch list. So I thought 720 was a lot.
So I thought that'd be a little early to name your rosters. So yeah.
Yeah, you got some depth there, huh?
It's
okay.
Early.
Carry on.
But yeah, we'll start the questions now as Chris corrects me there. Foghorn asks, what position group needs to improve the most from last year for us to win 6 games this season? Luke, we'll start with you.
I won't say position, but I'll say what we're doing as a team, and that's pass rush. Whether that comes through the blitz or the front 4. I think we can get to the passer now with the front 4, especially when Darren Aga gets back. But I think that's the number one thing.
Yeah, Luke's right. If you want me to be more specific and answer the question, I'll say what I've been saying since the end of last season. It's corner. You got to be better at corner this year. Got to make some plays there. Got to not get lost in coverage. Again, the pass rush is going to help if they get more of one, and I think they will. You don't have your corners covering for 19 seconds. But, yes, the corners have got to be better too.
I'll say a sleeper answer here, quarterback. We saw last year. I know we saw Mike Wright win basically 2 games, but it takes an extra effort from a quarterback, from your quarterback to get to that 6th win. So I'll say kind of an underrated answer there, the quarterback position. He also asks, you got something, Chris?
Well, I was just going to say for housekeeping here, I'll just for each of these, I'll let you give your answer. Luke gives his answer, then I'll wrap up with mine.
Gotcha. How many butts in seats this Saturday? That was the second part of Foghorn. His question. This is a tough one. I'll say very close to a sellout in what? It's 28.50, Chris, or 28.5. So I'll go 26 in the 26 range.
I'll go 21,000 because a lot of people, the elderly people, won't get out in that heat. They just won't. I'd say 20. They may announce it at 23, but I think butts and seats will be about 21.
Well, I hope you guys are right because I'd like to see more fans in the stand. I'm a lot more pessimistic. I'm going to go close to 14 or 15. I think it'll be the construction issue, which, I think we will see how well their plan holds up for getting people in and out, but certainly the entry points are going to be more limited. I think you have the heat as a built-in excuse. I think you have built-in excuses. And when Vanderbilt fans can find built-in excuses, they will go with them. So I'll tell you another reason I think this. I was looking online at ticket prices for this game. You had a lot of, had tickets for $3 and $5 each on some of these ticket broker sites. That's usually a sign you're nowhere near being sold out. So the ticket prices I saw in the secondary market last weekend made me think, there's going to be a lot of empty seats there, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't think the heat helps that. We will go now to next question, the Admiral VU. His first question for Luke. So, Luke, buckle up here. From your time, could you rank the top 3 worst visiting locker rooms you've seen in the SEC? Not necessarily pertinent to this weekend, but see if you can answer that.
Well, outside the conference, some that you'd been better off dressing on a bus. But in conference, the worst by far is Ole Miss and Tennessee. Everyone else in the league, the other Mississippi State's old one was not good, but it's improved. You used to have to go up a ramp to push all your gear up a ramp at Starkville, but that's changed. They have a very nice visitors locker room now. So Tennessee and Ole Miss are the worst two. After that, the rest of them are pretty good.
Luke,
Right,
I want to
go
ask you
second
something. Sorry about that. I want to. Is the transfer portal making visitor locker rooms get nicer? You think?
You know what? It could be. Yeah, I never gave much thought to that. You know, our visiting locker room was just small. It wasn't bad as far. It had an adequate amount of lockers. They were small, but It's always what you want is space. When you're on the road, you space for your training room, your coaches. But you know, I do think that may be a factor. I haven't really put much thought into that, Chris. So not sure.
All right, second part from the Admiral VU. Obviously, portable visiting locker rooms in the Holiday Inn parking lot isn't ideal, but does that impact a team's preparation and performance?
I can tell you this: when we played at Northwestern, and they had a horrific visitor locker room. They had like boxes on the wall that they called lockers. Our kids came out and they were mad about being there. Man, why are we having to play at this place? I'm thinking, well, look, it's Northwestern. They're your equal in a lot of ways. And I believe it or not, kids do pay attention to that because they had to go outside. Some of them you got, instead of being able to have room in the locker room to stretch and stuff, you got to take them outside and stretch on concrete and stuff like that. So it does play into it somewhat.
And Chris, that'll be something to watch this year. You know, it's going to be a totally different, environment and atmosphere at First Bank Stadium this year. Maybe that slightly affects some of these visiting teams. Now, whether it does, on the scoreboard, who knows? But mentally, you never know how that'll affect a team there.
Go ahead.
One quick thing. It's funny. It kind of goes back to when I first started at Vanderbilt. When I was young, teams used to walk over from the Holiday Inn. That's where the teams would stay, and then they'd walk across the street there, coming to the stadium. So it's kind of gone back to the way it was in the 70s.
Yeah, that's the setup for this week. They're going to be I was over there at Vanderbilt last week, and they had a tent set up where the visiting locker room was going to be. And look, I'll explain something for people here that they probably don't know. They were trying to do as much before last Monday, or was it this Monday now? I don't remember, in terms of getting stuff moving forward on construction. And then at that point, halt all that stuff and get their game day prep stuff up. So that was a sequence of events. So the whole, the visitors stuff is not ready yet was kind of part of the way they planned it. Now, look, if if something goes wrong, that's a pretty tight turnaround, it seems to me. But I'm not an expert in that area, but what they're going to do is they had a tent over there over a platform in the parking lot of the Holiday Inn last week where they were going to have the visitors facilities and all that stuff. There's a trailer over in that parking lot where they're going to have the visiting press conference and everything like that. So that's the lay of the land for people who care.
I don't think Hawaii, Alabama A&M, those two teams will have a problem with it because they go to some locker rooms that aren't good. But the SEC, they're the ones that are going to complain.
All right, let's go now to Bear 8000. What will it take to build the fan base back to around 27 to 30,000 Vanderbilt fans in the stands for SEC home games? And when will Vanderbilt fans stop selling their tickets to opposing fan bases? Chris, we'll start with you on that one.
Oh man, that's the $1 million question. I think it's the biggest question facing the athletic department in a lot of ways right now. Other than the backdrop of all the conference expansion and contraction and all those things, there was some interesting stuff in the athletic today. I won't get to that, but I don't know. It's going to take marketing for one thing. I'm not sure they're doing enough of that. It's going to take winning. Win some games, get people excited. It's been a decade since fans have had a winning season almost. That's a long, long time, and there have been some bad losses in there. I mean, I think it's it's a combination of both. Luke, you may have a more specific answer here than that, but I would love to hear your opinion, because I'm starting to wonder, what does the top end of the fan base look like at this point? How much can it be? Because I just think so many people, and I don't mean to be crass here, I just think so many people used to be in the stands for decades now are either in poor health or they're dead.
Well, what has happened is, and you touched on it, you're correct. They haven't developed a new fan base. The younger kid, that dad bringing his kid to the game. There's not enough of that, and Vanderbilt is to blame for a lot of that by not marketing. You're correct. Now, I will say this: the most season tickets we've ever sold at Vanderbilt, and I used to be best friends with the lady who ran the ticket office. In 1995, we played Notre Dame at home. And that season, because Notre Dame was on the schedule, we sold 21 to 24,000 tickets, somewhere in that area. So I would think if you're selling 15 to 17,000 tickets, you're pretty happy. That's where it was when James Franklin was here.
All right, we will go next to he had a second part here, but I think you guys touched on a lot of those. We'll go to SR Kane. Predict AJ Swann's stat line for the Hawaii game. He gives his prediction: 18 for 29, 265 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. That would be a very efficient game. I'll go something really similar to that. I don't think he may not have a ton of completions, just because I really do think they will try to establish the run with all the running backs they have. I'll go something like 16 for 26, for 250, maybe 2 touchdowns. Because Chris, I don't know if you agree. I just think they're going to run the ball more than we might think. And I think they might have some success, which means they might keep doing it. So I don't know if AJ, his stats will pop off the page at you, but he'll have an efficient game, I think.
I'll go 17 for 30 for 275.
There it is.
You guys are all in the same range. I can't do any better than that. I thought the minute I heard the one that he threw out, I'm like, I don't know that I can add much better to that. So I'll ride with what the poster ran with.
All right, let's go to Bex for VU. Any solid info yet? Good question. Any solid info yet on A, where the Star Walk will go from, and 2, B, where the teams regroup before the game and at halftime? Now, there is a map out, and I'm going to try to pull that up. But, Chris, in the meantime, do you want to – I'm not sure if you know exactly the Star Walk path as of right now.
No, I talked to someone over there last week, and that topic came up, and I think they said it would be addressed. I've not followed through and asked at this point, but I know that they had a plan for it. Luke might know better than –
Yeah, there's a – go to the Vanderbilt site. In fact, someone may have posted it on for you, Chris. There's a map, and the way I see it is they come out the same double doors they have before. Then you turn right and go toward the McGugan parking lot, and then across the street and enter like you're going into Hawkins Field to come onto the field. That's what it looks like if you look at the map.
Okay, so it's basically probably in total a 200-yard detour.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. So Luke's right. Basically, walking in the outfield of Hawkins Field to go in and out. There's another exit on that east side of the stadium. Right there across Kensington Garage, and then of course near Memorial, and then exit out to Kensington Place. So those are the 2 additional exits. And then it looks like the Frisk family gate looks like it's in the same spot, but won't be the same entrance. So that is on your board, Chris. So if anybody wants to go check that out, that is in the message board.
Yeah, the entrance and exit points, just to kind of tighten that up a little bit. If you are on the non-press box side, the baseball field side, you'll go in. I think any of the gates in Memorial that are on, was it that street? There's that 25th or 24th. I always can't remember.
25th.
Very well, it's
25th. That's what I thought. Yes, thank you. all those gates, I think, are going to be open for fans to come in on that side. If you were on the other side, the press box side, there's going to be one gate. It is going to be what's that? You know where that ATM is? Across the street on that side, there's a small ATM. There's that little strange intersection that cuts across there. And there's some Vanderbilt properties on the other side. It's down towards the
28th
formerly
Avenue
closed in.
South.
Yeah, 28th. It's down more towards the formerly closed end zone side. But there's an ATM there that's kind of your landmark, and that's where they're going to be entering people on that side. The streets are closed off for construction. And then, as you said, you can exit out the baseball field. You literally can walk across the infield and the outfield to get out. You can't come in that way. But, Billy, I think you'll probably hit on that in some of our preview show. And I think we'll have somebody from the school on to talk about some of that. But there's your basic answers there.
Yes, yeah, we'll definitely hit on that more in the pregame show. That will be released Friday, so still Wednesday of game week here. All right, Beck's review also had a second part of his question. Do you think any position group has regressed from last year?
Luke, I'll let you start.
Gosh, obviously we haven't played a game, so I'll just say no. I don't think there's any regression. Maybe the kicker, maybe. I haven't seen enough of that to know. Obviously, we've got Hayball back at punter. But all the position groups are just going to get better as time goes on because they're stacking these good classes and providing depth.
My answer would be running back. I think, Ray Davis had his limitations. Luke's going to disagree with me on that one, but I think you'd rather have Ray Davis back than not.
I had something in my eye. I wanted to disagree.
Oh, sorry. That looked like a violent disagreement. It's like I'm that far off. So yeah, there's that. I think they'll be better at corner probably because they've got a little bit more depth there. I think, although it's really young. I mean, all things considered, I would have preferred to have Jeremy Lucien back. He's having a really good camp with the Ravens.
Yeah.
And I think is either going to make that team or make the practice squad. Again, Luke, you've hammered on this point all off season. Some of their difficulties at corner were the inability to get a pass rush. Now, again, I do think they had difficulties at corner too, but those are two spots that I would. And I know the second is not an entire position group, but those are the two that come to mind for me.
Yeah, and a running back, it's a different style of approach this year at running back, right? Ray Davis and that entire offense was a ground and pound triple option at times, right? But this year, with the way they'll be able to spread out, those backs are going to get some chances, to hit some home runs. And Ray Davis wasn't really a home run back, so I think that'll be something interesting to watch as well. Let's see. He also asks, what position group has improved the most? This is a good one. It's tough because, as Luke said, a lot of them have gotten better. But I'll just say naturally quarterback. I mean, it's hard not to say any other position. I mean, Mike Wright, nothing against Mike Wright, but, moving the ball down the field through the air was not something he could consistently do. And A.J. Swan, that's what he does. So I'll say quarterback, but I'm looking forward to hearing y'all's answers there.
I'll go receiver just because of the depth and the many options you have. When you're talking about a kid like y'all mentioned, Richie Hoskins, being on the depth chart, that speaks to how good we could be because if Junior Sherrill isn't on the depth chart, I know I watched that kid's career in high school, and I was so excited when we signed him, and I still think he's going to do a lot of good things, and he'll get playing time. But I'm going to say wide receiver.
I think Luke is right. I've said this all off season. I think that in camp, I'm not saying the Chancey guys are the best two receivers ever come out of Vanderbilt. That's a high bar. Probably not going to happen. But I've been going to fall camp, I think, since 2004. And I don't think I've seen two freshmen. I don't think I've ever seen a freshman better in camp, a true freshman, than either of those guys were. So the fact that Junior Sherrill ended up third team tells you something about that room. I think Vandy fans, the product has been so bad for so long, they'll say, well, I think we're good here, and all good means is maybe less bad than usual. No, I think this is a good receiving room. Like, I suspect that when we see it on the field, there are several SEC teams that would swap rooms with Vanderbilt in that area. I think it's a good receiving room. I think the other thing that stood out to me, guys, I just think they're so much better on the front seven. Some of that's depth and being able to rotate guys in, but I thought the Pattersons were tremendous. One of them is not even starting, according to the depth chart. I think the front four are a lot better. Health of Devin Lee is going to help. Guys going year 2 to year 3 and year 1 to year 2. Watara being one of those is going to help. That's a kid that could really have a breakout year if he stays healthy. To me, I just think, and I know people are going to say, well, they lost Anthony Orji. I was never quite as high on him as other people were. I know he racked up some numbers. I've watched dominant Vanderbilt linebackers. I never felt like he really approached that territory. I liked him better at linebacker this year than I did last year. I just think their front seven is going to be a lot better. But I think the best answer is the one that Luke gave.
All right, and that leads us into this next question from Vandy Doors Ned. Could you rank each of our positions in the SEC where we rank 1 through 14? Now, we'll start on offense. Obviously, this might take a bit, but fairly quick answers here. Quarterbacks, I mean, bottom 4. I think a potential. I mean, right now I would put AJ Swan in that bottom 4, but probably at the top part of that, maybe 10, maybe 11. But realistically, he's probably more like 13 or 14 just because he hasn't done a ton against SEC competition. But Luke, I'm not sure where you would have Vanderbilt's quarterbacks right now in terms of the SEC.
Well, I always look at it like this. Okay, if you had a trade before camp started and AJ went through camp at, say, Ole Miss, would AJ be the starting quarterback? Probably not, because they have Dart. But if he was at about 4 or 5 other places, he'd probably be the starter and win the job. So I'll put, kind of like you said, around the 10 to 11 mark.
This is going to be hard across the board, and it's because there's so many transfers. And I just don't know what some of these teams are going to be until I see those kids on the field. Sometimes guys that transfer in for Conference USA schools and start are really good players in Sun Belt, and then you got a lot of that in this league. They take their game to the next level. Sometimes you look at them and go, okay, that's why they were offered a scholarship to the Sun Belt in Conference USA, not the SEC out of the gate. I think it's going to be a terribly hard exercise to answer, but I heard somebody pose this the other day. Whose quarterback room would you rather have right now, Vandy's or Alabama's? And that's going to sound ridiculous. I get it. Alabama's obviously got a lot more talent, but they got 4 guys maybe in the mix down there. If the old saying is when you got 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any. I think that's.
Well, how do you think
maybe,
Florida like AJ Swan?
What's that?
Think Florida would like AJ Swan right now?
Yeah. Well, Graham Mertz had a good camp, and the hype train on that one's going crazy. I'd rather have Swan. I mean, would AJ Swan start Alabama right now? I mean, I don't know where they'll go. I mean, Ty Simpson was a 5-star kid out of high school. Maybe he's the guy. Jalen Milroe could be the guy. But, I mean, I saw a lot more out of his feet than I did out of his arm. They've got a freshman, was it Dylan Lonergan, that had a really good camp down there. And then they got Tyler Buckner, who transferred in from Notre Dame, who was very ordinary at Notre Dame. I don't know how do you size that one up, but
and if you go ahead, Luke.
I'm sorry, guys.
Very good.
Excites me is the depth in the quarterback room. It's one of the deepest quarterback. Someone, how many times said, "Oh no, so and so's out. This game's over." That's not the case now. Ken Seals, God bless him, he is stuck through. You talk about somebody who's been through it at Vanderbilt. I mean, gracious. And I feel good about if he has to come in and play. I really do.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. You stole the words out of my mouth. I mean, that's the quarterback room, right? I think if you polled and put a truth serum to a lot of SEC coaches, they would love to have Vanderbilt's quarterback room right now. I mean, with a veteran like a Ken Seals as your backup and a 6'6", freakish athlete like a Walter Taylor, maybe not freakish, but I mean, he's got some potential. So I think, yeah, I completely agree there, Luke. Receivers, Chris, we just talked about it. I mean, you would say that's a top half unit in the league right now, right? I mean, just with that depth, or is that too hard to answer?
Possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some look. Georgia's got a phenomenal receiving room. They just took the best receivers off two other SEC schools, and they had talent to begin with. Tennessee's obviously is going to be better than Vandy's from the jump. Kentucky's is going to be better. So I mean, I don't know. Let me see who else. LSU's is better.
South Carolina's.
I don't know. They got Juice Wells. Other than that, I don't know about their depth. I think theirs is better than Missouri's. I think theirs is better than Florida's. I could argue theirs is better on the whole than South Carolina's. Theirs is better than Arkansas's, better than Auburn's. I think better than Mississippi State's. Ole Miss, I just don't know because it's so transfer heavy. I mean, they're probably middle of the pack in the league. But by the way, guys, Bill, I'm going to have to short circuit the question here because I've got to be on another show in about 13 minutes. And if we do the whole exercise for all these, and I think, how many questions do we have left?
We've got about 3 to 4.
Yeah, I just think it's too hard of a question anyway. Ask me again in a month when we've seen all these teams play just because of the transfer issue. But, I mean, I think they are – the answer I give that I think is the most illuminating is I think that I look everywhere and they are either they're starting to meet a mid-level SEC standard at some spots and they're gaining ground on others in a lot of places. Like I think the defensive line and the linebackers are a lot better. But I really don't know what they have for sure till we see them play some other dudes. And we're just not going to see that really till mid to end of September.
One quick thing about the guys. When we see how these young guys do against press coverage in this league, that's where you're going to find out a whole lot. When teams that play zone and that type of thing, I think our receivers will do fine. But getting off a bump and run type stuff, that's going to be a key for these guys that are unproven.
All right, up next, let's go to VU Matt 23. For these questions, he's got 4 questions. For these questions, y'all have to pick different answers. Pick your 2 most improved offensive players. I'll start here. I will go, and again, it's hard. Season hasn't started. We've only seen fall camp. I'll go Ken Seals. Ken Seals, and I know you said he had a really good fall camp last year, Chris, but I think this staff will tell you Ken's gotten better, and he likes this offense. He likes Joey Lynch. I would say Ken Seals, number 1. And then let's go Gunnar Hansen. And I know that's kind of an outlier there, but I've loved what I've seen from him in fall camp. The staff has raved about him and his tenacity and his toughness. So 2 sort of, out of the box answers there, but I'll go Ken Seals and Gunnar Hansen. Luke?
I'm going to go more with 2 that I hope are the most improved. How about that? Because it's hard to tell who will be. Patrick Smith and Justin Ball. Those 2 probably are the most important that need to be the most.
Okay. I was debating on offense. Billy, you took one of my answers in Gunnar Hansen, who they think is going to be an NFL player. I think this will excite and surprise some people. I think Will Shepherd, as good as he was last year, man, when he was out there, he was. And again, maybe that's an indictment of their corner situation, but my goodness, he could not be stopped. I think defense. I got 2 guys in mind. I think Nate Clifton up front is gone from a guy that's out there and was assignment sound to a guy that's starting to make some plays and pop a little bit. And I think Kane, both the Pattersons were really good, but Kane to me seems to have elevated his game. And I think there's a little bit more of a clear path to playing time, whereas Langston is probably going to be in a timeshare with Ethan Barr.
Yeah, defensively, I'll go Savion Riley. He didn't get very many opportunities last year on defense. I think some fans will be surprised by what he brings this year, pleasantly surprised. And then let's see here. I'll go Nate Clifton. I mean, Nate Clifton is a guy that's a team leader. He's one of the captains. He's a local guy. He has stuck through this process, and he has truly gotten better. He's turned himself. I don't know if he's an NFL prospect, but if he has a good year this year, you never know. So I'll go Nate Clifton and Savion Riley on defense.
Defensively for me is Issa and, believe it or not, Derricky Wright. Derricky, as good as he is, had a lot of busts, and I think those will be over with. I think he's going to be so solid and be a great all-SEC type player.
Okay, here's the third question from VU Matt. It's a really good one. Pick an offensive player that will play little to not at all at the beginning of the year, but become a big factor by the end of the season. And I think I've brought this guy up, and it's hard to pick just one of them. I want to say Humphreys and Sherrill. I mean, that's the easy answer. But with Humphreys, I don't know. I just think with his speed, his home run ability, there's going to be some corners that he looks over at AJ and says, "Hey, I'm flat faster than this guy. Throw me a." I truly think that. Now it might be tougher late in the year against a lot of those SEC corners, but I mean, easy answer, guys. Humphreys and Sherrill. I don't know if you guys have any other options there.
One of the running backs. I don't know which one, but one of them will surprise. One of them's going to step up and do a great job.
Well, I'm going to differ from Billy a little bit here. I think the key was progression from start to finish. Although you've got an argument there. I think that although I think Humphreys is going to be a factor day one, and I think Sherrill could be. I think he's going to play some in day one, game one. The guy to me that was easy answer on offense was AJ Newberry. I just think he's best back on the roster in terms of talent. I don't know that you'll see him much in the opener. I think you could see him as their starting running back by year's end. Could. Now, I don't know how assignment sound he is and everything. That's a big thing. So if I'm way wrong on this, I'm going to guess it comes in the areas of pass blocking and knowing assignments. To me, he was clearly their most talented back. I'm going to give you another one. This name has not come up this podcast. Cam Johnson, tight end. The last day of work I saw, Cam Johnson, that was probably the star of that day. Now, some of that may have been design. That might have been resting other guys. That might have come against third-team backs. I don't know. I wasn't that locked into who he was doing it against and what the situation was. But Cam Johnson, Billy, I think you might have been there for this, caught 5 or 6 balls. And some of them went for first downs and then some. So that's a guy they really like. I think he'll start the year as their third or fourth tight end. You could see him be higher than that by season's end.
All right, let's last part of this VU Matt question, defensive player. All right, let's do a defensive candidate here for breakout player that will do some things late in the year, but maybe not at the beginning of the season. Looking through the depth chart, I will go. I'll go Bryce Cowan, and I'll go Bryce Cowan because of maybe CJ Taylor gets dinged up and can't play a game or two. Cowan will step right in. He's 6'4", 225. He is a legit SEC type athlete with range and speed. With Taylor in front of him, it might be tough to find time on the field. But they will rotate there. And so I think you'll see Cowan, but especially if the injury bug happens to Taylor, knock on wood, Cowan will step in there, and I expect him to do well there. So I'll say Bryce Cowan.
I've got a couple in mind. Longwell, the freshman, I think as time goes on, he will play more. And Miles Capers, I think he'll round into form after getting more comfortable underneath with his knee. I think he'll round into form and really be good down the stretch.
You know what I think is interesting about these questions, guys, and I think it says something about the roster and the recent recruiting. We're coming up with different answers for different
We are,
reasons.
yeah.
Like you said, Longwell. I can see it, but are the Pattersons going to cede time? I don't know. Could Bryce Cowan move back to linebacker if C.J. Taylor stays healthy? I don't know. That's where you have issues where you can make a case for a guy, but you
Right.
can also make a case by them getting blocked by other guys. I'll give you. Here's another name. There's a couple degrees here. I mentioned Cowan. I think you could see Bryce Cowan is kind of C.J. Taylor light, and then he made a lot of plays. Doesn't exactly have a spot, but he was so good that you're like, they can't keep this guy off the field. That's how it played out. I don't think Bryce Cowan was as spectacular as C.J. Taylor was this time a year ago, but I think that's a guy that caught my eye as maybe this year's version. I think depending on how much Martell Height sees the field in the beginning, like do they just go with Russell or is that more of a timeshare? I mean, if Height plays 5 snaps in the opener, that's a kid I could see be playing just about every snap by the end of the year. That's one. Here's another guy. This guy didn't make the depth chart, and I was a little surprised. Demarion Thomas. I think Demarion Thomas is got a body type they are lacking on the defensive line. He was running second team a lot of camp. So I don't know if there was an injury situation there or something, or they just went with the more veteran guys. But that's a kid. You don't see a lot of defensive linemen that is true freshman at Vandy. You say that kid might be able to make an impact, but he stood out to me in that regard.
One more guy on defense, Davion Walker. He's the third string corner behind Anderson and Barry right now. Watch out for him. He's 6'2", he's fast, and he's got the natural tools. So watch out for Davion Walker late this season. All right, a few more questions. Let's rumble through these. What are your thoughts on the field and stadium readiness for game day with construction in both end zones? We've talked about this. Obviously, it's not the best situation. It'll be interesting to see how the fans enjoy going to this game. I think this is a big tryout. This is almost like a pop quiz for Vanderbilt and their staff and everybody getting this stadium ready. If it goes really well, okay, then big test coming up with Kentucky and Missouri at home. Maybe more people show up, right? Obviously, it helps if you win, right? You want to win, but at the same time, there's a lot of ancillary things that have to be executed. But Chris, you told me after the tour we got from the staff, you were there at the tour. You said, I don't think it'll be nearly as inefficient as you might originally thought. Now, when Georgia comes to town, that might be a different story. But we've talked about this plenty.
Yeah, and I hate to do this. I've got another show to do in about 5 minutes, so we'll need to wrap this up here. That might leave some unanswered questions. Billy, you may even want to take those for the mailbag for the pregame. But look, I think this is going to be the first run. The fact that it's not a Georgia, and they'll have 2 weeks with Hawaii and Alabama and A&M, which have smaller gates. I think that's going to help. Their confidence in this, right or wrong, and we will see Saturday, is really never wavered in their ability to pull that off. Is that a fair way to say it, Luke?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. You're only dealing with less than 30,000 people, so it's not like you got a 70,000. You're kind of squeezing 2 entrances. Just get there earlier. That's all I say. 30 minutes earlier than you normally would get there.
So
Billy, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll save the last 2 for the pregame show. That'll be released Friday. So Raiders 1967, Commodores 94. We will. I'll get those answered on Friday.
Good deal. And my apologies for that. This is one of these days where I've just got stuff wall to wall to wall, which is Billy why you're here, among other things. But anyway, thank you to everybody. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be this way. We're going to have. Go ahead, Luke. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Do y'all want to do a score prediction right quick?
Yes, 44-17 Vandy.
37-21 Vandy.
Ooh, I'll go similar to Chris, 45-17. I think Hawaii will score.
Well, gentlemen, it's been fun. Again, sorry we could have gone longer had I the time today, but I just don't. So, yeah, we will have a pregame show. Billy will probably get that out sometime Thursday or Friday. I will not be on that. We will have a post-game show Saturday from Chili's on West End, just across the stadium. So probably around 30 minutes after the game, whenever Billy can get over and get set up, he and Luke will start it. I will come join later as Joey Dwight and I get out of Clark's press conference. So we'll come and add some additional context. That'll probably go about an hour and a half. That will be streamed live on YouTube, so you can ask questions and all kinds of stuff. And a couple more things before we go. Still looking for a sponsor for football season. Biggest piece of real estate we got on the show. We need that. That really helps us. Number one, looking for a sponsor for the studio. That's a little bit less of an ask, but looking for one there. Got one of those proposals out. If you're listening, you know who you are. I would appreciate some support there. And finally, to those out there, we will probably start, I don't know if it'll be a Patreon or something like that where people can donate. But if you have not done it, subscribe to the site. It's $99 a year. You get a lot of stuff there, again, that you don't get here. If everybody that listens to these podcasts subscribe to the website, look, it would have made our past a lot different. It would certainly make our future a lot different, not just in terms of being able to provide product and equipment and all those things, but just to pay our bills and lead to a little more sanity at home for all of us. So in any case, sanity's underrated. All right. Sorry, we got to go. For Billy Derrick and Luke Wyatt, I'm Chris Lee of VandySports. Thanks for listening. Thanks to our sponsors. We'll see you again soon.